please join me in welcoming the Co-Deputy Director of the FBI, Chris Raia.
Howdy. That did work. That was really good. That was really good. For those of you who don't know, I served 7 years in the office here as the supervisor of the greatest resident agency in the country, the Bryan College Station resident agency. So it's great to see some people I worked with before, and great to see some new faces as well. And it's also great to hear. When I started this journey, and I'll talk a little bit about this in my speech when I get to, but it's really great to hear Vice Chancellor of Research talk about the support for research security, because quite frankly, when I was here 12 years ago, and when I started with Dr. Gamache, I don't know that we would have that type of support back then, and I don't know that we would have that type of commitment from the Vice Chancellor and of Research or a Vice President of Research to support, not only support, but recognize the challenges that are faced. So thank you, sir, for that introduction. Really appreciate that. So in 2014, like I was saying, I got brought here to the Bryan College Station office, which we consider a satellite office. We call it an RA. Back then, the ASCE was just being created. It was an idea. In fact, myself and some of you may know Zach Carwile, we sat on a lot of those initial calls as kind of de facto counselors, de facto consultants, if you will, and we were brought in very early when it was really just an idea. It was an idea that Kevin had, and a passion, quite frankly, that he had to improve research security. Not only improve research security because he knew how important it was based on his military careers, but based on his previous military career, but also to improve relationships with the government, specifically with the FBI. I've watched this program grow, not only here at the RA, when I was here at the resident agency, but I watched it grow from my seat as an ASAC in Houston, from my seat as a Deputy Assistant Director in Counterterrorism, from my seat as the head of the New York office, and now from my seat as the Deputy Director. And I gotta tell you, for me, speaking here is very surreal. When we started this 10 years ago, and I say we, it was really Kevin and Texas A&M. When he started this 10 years ago, I was the guy here that was coordinating the Deputy Director to come speak, the Executive Assistant Director to come speak, the Assistant Director to come speak. And I cannot tell you how surreal it is for me to actually be here to be the keynote speaker. So thank you to Texas A&M, thank you to the ASCE, and thank you for everybody for allowing me here to speak today. I've been fortunate to see the evolution in the FBI's partnership with Texas A&M, and it really is. I'm not saying this because I was here for 7 years. It really is a gold standard that we see in the FBI as the academic FBI relationship. And I got to tell you, and Kevin and I, we talk about this all the time. It wasn't always like this. When I got here in 2014, the relationship between myself, Diane Hurtado, who I see, and Kevin, it was rocky at best at the beginning. And the whole reason the resident agency was put here back in, I think it was 2006, 2007, the whole reason our office is here was because of the university and because of our role in protecting the sensitive and classified research in this university. And so when I got the job here, I was explicitly told that your number one priority is to help secure the sensitive and confidential classified research that's going on at the university. And so shortly after I got, and back then you have to understand, our agents that work that stuff, our counterintelligence agents, they were very used to running in the shadows, running behind the lines, so to speak, doing things uncoordinated, doing things without letting anybody know, doing stuff secret squirrel. And shortly after I got here, a couple weeks after I got here, we had one of those agents who was a very good agent, kind of the old school agent. He came over here and he did a very confrontational interview with a department head. And that interview got back to my office, and I got called to what I call the principal's office. Back then, it was the interim president at the time. I got called to the interim president's office. And I'll never forget, I sat down there with Diane, I sat down there with Kevin Gamache, and he showed me a letter. And in that letter, it specifically said, and it specifically pointed out the FBI, and it said, if the FBI comes over, and he was going to send it to all the faculty, and it essentially said, if the FBI talks to you, not agency, not any other government agency, if it was the FBI that comes to talk to you as a faculty member or a staff, refer them to OGC and do not talk to them. And I knew that if that letter were to go out, that we would be dead in the water related to our investigation, related to our mandate of protecting the sensitive research here. And so I knew something had to change. And we started after that moment, I started with multiple folks in my office changing the culture in the office. And we started bringing Texas A&M in. We started bringing Diane in, we started bringing Kevin in, and we started peeling back that curtain. And we started to build, and you're gonna hear me talk about this a lot today, we started to build that trust. And we started to learn the academic language, which we didn't quite know, and we didn't understand their interests, and they started to learn our language. And it was over a series of a bunch of meetings, over a series of a bunch of hard conversations, over a series of a few times stepping in it, so to speak, that we were able to build that relationship. And I got to tell you, by the time I left, that relationship was so solid with this university here. I'll give you an example. When I first got here, we wouldn't get any work from the university because we were trying to do it all unilaterally. We were trying to do it without the help of A&M. And when I left, that relationship had progressed so much that there was so much work coming in from Kevin and his shop and from the different entities in the university. We could not keep up with it. And so we did a really good job, and a lot of those folks are sitting at that table over there. We did a really good job of making Texas A&M University part of the solution and not part of the problem. And my hope is that that is being replicated, and I know it's being replicated. My hope is that that gets replicated everywhere across the country, because there is no way we're going to arrest our way out of this problem. The arrests are good, they serve a purpose, but it's events like this and it's relationships that are going to contain the problem that has really, quite honestly, gotten out of control over the last decade. This partnership, this seminar, the ASCE itself, it's critical to protecting our nation's science and technology. As you all know, our researchers are producing some of the most valuable advances ever seen, and it continues to grow day by day. Artificial intelligence alone is driving world-changing breakthroughs in everything from astronomy to agriculture and energy to the environment. But new technologies and discoveries make for coveted prizes for certain actors who don't play by the rules when it comes to intellectual property. Everyone wants a piece of the shiny new technology that's going to give them the edge in the global economy. Or it could give them a military advantage against their adversaries. Today, I'd like to share what the Bureau sees as the main threats to the academic and research spaces. And then I'll describe a little bit how we can safeguard our hard-won scientific progress while maintaining openness and collaboration. It may come as a surprise to some of you, but the FBI shares your institution's belief on two things. One, we believe in a collaborative, open, and inclusive academic environment that promotes life-changing research and fosters economic development. And two, we believe that international students and scholars contribute significantly to U.S. research and the economy. We believe those two things. The FBI believes those two things. However, as a law enforcement and national security agency, we at the Bureau also get a front row seat to see the dark side of that international collaboration. Over the past 20 years, and specifically the last 10 years, we've seen cutting-edge research become a prime target for nations looking to gain an unfair economic or military advantage. And while this is not a new threat, I can tell you, specifically from the seat I'm sitting in today, that that threat is growing, and no industry, no research institution is immune. When I heard this number, I couldn't believe it. The FBI estimates that our country loses hundreds of billions with a B, not millions, hundreds of billions of dollars to foreign competitors every year. To use just one indicator, the Bureau's counterintelligence arrests reached record numbers over the past year, with a 40% increase in arrests related to China specifically in 2025. And I'm going to camp out on China for a little bit because they continue. For those of you who've been in the space for a little bit, you know that the three big, this is common knowledge, unclassified, you could Wikipedia, the three big countries we were about stealing our intellect. Do you guys have to go for Amber Alert? No? You guys good? Okay. The three big countries we worry about stealing our research: China, Iran, Russia. I'm going to focus on China today, and specifically the government of China. I'm going to focus on them because of geopolitical events. I'm not saying it's not an issue, because it still is an issue, but Russia and really Iran are really concerned with other things, and we've really seen a downtick in a lot of their progress in trying to steal our sensitive research. So for the purposes of today, I want to focus on the CCP. However, those other two countries are still in the game, but not as prolific as they have before, and certainly not anywhere to the near breadth and scale that we're seeing China right now. And while not all these cases involved economic espionage or thefts of trade secrets, referring to the Chinese arrests the counterintelligence arrests that we increased by 40% this year, a large portion of them did focus on espionage or theft of trade secrets. Take, for example, a recent case out of our San Francisco office. A former Google engineer, Lin Wei Ding, was convicted last month for stealing thousands of pages of confidential information related to Google's AI technology. We found that he's stolen it to benefit the Chinese government, which means he wasn't just stealing to enrich himself, he was conducting economic espionage. It was our first ever conviction on AI-related economic espionage charges. And I know a lot of your universities here are in that AI space. And although this specific incident did not involve a research institution per se, it just as easily could have happened at a research institution and not a multi-billion-dollar company like Google. But given how quickly that our industry is growing and how determined the government of China is to expand its AI technologies at any cost, we can expect to see more cases like it, and some of you may be seeing cases like it currently. Or consider the case of another Chinese actor who pled guilty last year to theft of trade secrets for stealing technologies developed for our government to detect nuclear missile launches. I don't need to explain the importance of that and how getting that into the wrong hands could affect our national security. But we're seeing these cases all the time, and we've observed that foreign competitors and adversaries are becoming more and more brazen. Some countries are stealing U.S. technology, then jumping to patent it in a foreign country before American research teams have applied for the same U.S. patent. These countries often ask for cooperation and collaboration, the cornerstone of our research culture, but they fail to reciprocate. Not all their methods are illegal, but many of the strategies are unethical and lack transparency and reciprocity, including things like sharing pre-publication research data without permission, acquiring advanced access to grant proposals, or influencing the grant approval process itself. And of course, many of their methods are illegal. For example, researchers lying about their affiliation with foreign entities or actively stealing the results of hard-won American research, as I'll share in detail in a moment. Quite simply, these actors do not play by the same rules we do. Their foreign government sponsors, like China, facilitate and reward these illegal technology transfers, giving their recruits mountains of money and other perks. It's often explicitly written in their national policies. For example, in 2014, you can go online and read this. Xi Jinping said that, and I quote, "Whoever holds the key to science and technology innovation will be able to preempt the rivals and win the advantage." And if that doesn't concern you from one of our main foreign adversaries right now, I don't know what does. His statement reflects that technology transfer in part and parcel of China's get-ahead strategy, so much so that they've created an entire ecosystem around it. I'm sure by now everyone has heard of the Thousand Talents Plan, a program China devised to recruit US-based researchers to acquire and hand over critical technology. Ding, the engineer I spoke of earlier at Google, applied for a talent plan because he said he wanted to, quote, "help China to have computing power infrastructure capabilities that are on par with the international level." Now, you all probably know much more about AI than I do, but I know enough to know that whoever matures that research the quickest is going to have a big advantage over everybody else in the world. Implied in that statement from Ding is that China can't get there on its own merit. They have to cheat. Hundreds of millions of US government grant dollars and private sector technologies have been repurposed to support China's economic and military goals. Often, it's technology that poses a threat to US national security or threatens to undercut our country economically. And even if it looks like the theft is for personal gain, you can assume in the large majority of these cases that we investigate that it will also benefit the Chinese government. Because quite simply, we can draw a very short line between Chinese companies and the Chinese government. And increasingly, we can even draw an even shorter line between Chinese universities and the Chinese government, which is obviously concerning for a lot of people in this room. What they've got in China, what we do not have here, is that the Chinese Communist Party has been taking a direct role in running universities across the country, merging its embedded party committees with university presidents' offices. These mergers are unprecedented and something we have only seen recently. They're giving the CCP greater control over all activities, including, and most importantly, sensitive research. It's a worrisome trend for sure. And I share this perspective not to fearmonger, not to skies falling you, or argue that we need to dismantle research partnerships. That is not what we're saying at the FBI, but only to highlight the serious nature of the threat to our scientific advancement, our economy, and quite frankly, our way of life. Simply put, research security is national security. The million-dollar question, which I'm sure you struggle with and that I struggle with, and the majority of FBI agents, analysts, employees that work this stuff struggle with is, how do we protect an open system and the resulting benefits gained while preventing the unethical and illegal transfer of sensitive technology? Obviously, there's no easy answer. But from the FBI's perspective, there are considerable ways to minimize risk without harming collaboration. A case that illustrates this well involved the Nationwide Children's Hospital Research Institute in Ohio about 6 years ago. Two scientists there were conducting cutting-edge research funded by an NIH grant. They had employed Li Chen at their lab, while Chen's husband, Yu Shu, worked in another lab at the institute. One day, the institute received an anonymous letter suggesting that a nefarious scheme was underway. It claimed that Chen and Shu had stolen the advanced research their employers had produced in their lab. Research related to exosomes and exosome isolation. Now, I don't know what any of that stuff means, but it sounds pretty bad. You guys laughed at that. Even my notes said that. Pause for laughs, so that was good. All right. But I do understand that that research was intended to advance the treatment of conditions that affect premature babies and cancer patients. Chen and her husband removed that research valued at nearly $1.3 million, then used it to create a product and start multiple companies in China. In the process, all the science was made inaccessible to the Research Institute, at least for a while. That's when Chen and Xu were willing to do for the sake of financial gain. But that wasn't all. They also received benefits from the Chinese government. And Chen had applied for multiple Chinese talent plans, which showed her intent to transfer the NIH-funded research directly to the Chinese government. Obviously, that case involved a terrible breach, not just stolen information, but also broken trust. It was a complex problem that required a multifaceted approach. The FBI's capabilities are often critical when it comes to stopping that kind of malicious activity before it can truly hurt your institution. Any security actions we take are meant to work as a scalpel, not a hammer. We want to surgically remove the bad actors without punishing the researchers acting in good faith. I think I speak for all the FBI when I say we know that 99% of the research going on is good faith research, good faith partnerships. We're looking for that 1%, much like we do on the CT side of things. We're looking for that one person that wants to do harm to the U.S. We're looking for that one person here that wants to do harm to the U.S. in this space. So when it came to help Nationwide Children's, we understood right away that the hospital was in a serious predicament. They needed to get the research back and resolve the situation quickly without jeopardizing future NIH funding. So agents from our Cincinnati field office spent a lot of time there. They learned about the research and its significance, examined the lab security protocols, which were solid, and they clearly explained why they were asking the questions they were asked. I can tell you from not being involved in that case, just reading the case study and talking to people, that partnership that they had between the FBI and that hospital was a very strong partnership. I know that because that letter, that nefarious anonymous complaint letter that they got about the nefarious actions was given to our FBI agents. We got the U.S. Attorney's Office involved early so they could explain the process and the charges they would pursue. We also made it clear to the institution that we would protect their proprietary information and that we had no intention of being a big hero moment, busting in, wearing our raid jackets to save the day and ultimately embarrass the institution. Nobody heard about this case until we prosecuted it and made public statements. And those public statements were coordinated with the institution. Again, we made the institution part of the solution, not part of the problem. In fact, we even talked to NIH on behalf of Nationwide Children's to make absolutely clear the hospital and associated lab were not at fault in this situation. Our mission was simple: restore the research materials to the rightful owners and build a solid case against those responsible. And that is exactly what we did with the help of the victim institution. We found that Xu and Chen weren't using any sort of secret, sensitive spy tradecraft to hide what they were doing. They weren't cloak and dagger. They weren't doing dead drops in the middle of campus. They were simply just transferring research to China by giving presentations and publishing their work in their native language of Mandarin. Many universities, I was shocked to learn this, you may be too, many university and research institutes don't have the resources to do internet searches in Mandarin. So Nationwide Children's couldn't know Xu and Chen were illegally transferring the research. Incidentally, one of our search warrants revealed that Chen had emailed Xu the hospital's intellectual property agreement, further proving the pair knew exactly what they were doing. This is why in cases like this, you want the benefit of the FBI's reach. Our knowledge of legal process, the expertise of our linguists and technical experts, our discretion, and our dedication to protecting your institution and the valuable research that you all are producing. We get results in these cases by building strong relationships before any breach happens. I can't tell you how important that is. And I've said this before at this conference when I've talked before, if you are a research security professional at your specific university and you are not on a first name basis with the FBI agent or agents that handle your university, shame on us. Not shame on you, shame on us. We need to know that. Contact your local FBI office, whether it's a resident agency, a satellite office, field office. Contact me, for crying out loud. We'll get somebody out there to talk to you. But in my opinion, being on a first name basis, just like I'm on a first name basis with Kevin, and our current staff here is on a first name basis with Kevin, those should be replicated all across the country. Nationwide Children's contacted FBI Cincinnati as soon as they received the anonymous letter. I'm telling you, 10, 15 years ago, this case does not happen. Full stop. And I know of cases like this that are happening all over the country now because of relationships you all have built with our folks. They had gotten to know our field office and trusted our people to help. They knew what everyone here should know, that in a situation like this, and please hear me on this, the FBI is here to help. In the end, because our agents had carefully built the case, Xu and Chen pleaded guilty. They went to federal prison, forfeited $1.45 million in stock, and were ordered to pay $2.6 million in restitution. And one of the scientists whose research they stolen had the opportunity to provide a victim impact statement. This case was a partnership through and through. And although we cannot undo what Xu and Chen did, we did make sure they faced justice. So as I close, resolving a situation like that breach involves a lot of moving parts, and the answer isn't limited to law enforcement. Again, you heard me say at the beginning, we are not going to wrest our way out of this problem. In this case, the solution involved the victim institution's administrators and general counsel, the cooperation of researchers, and a relationship with their research security professionals built on trust. I wanted to share that case with you to highlight a simple fact. We cannot protect our country's scientific research without your help. The FBI not only relies, but needs partners like you. Your insight to emerging technologies that may make enticing targets for our adversaries. They need your recognition of patterns and trends in the misuse of those technologies, and we need your existing relationships within the community and with law enforcement agencies like the FBI, which enable intelligence sharing. You've heard me say this before, if you heard me speak before, the FBI needs to share until it hurts. And I think we still have a little bit to go, but I think we've made huge adjustments when it comes to sharing information when it relates to cases like this. We can't stop foreign governments from trying to steal our sensitive technologies and advancements, but if we all work together, we can frustrate more of those attempts while maintaining the spirit of an open collaboration that defines our academic culture. Thank you for all you do to secure our nation and the world's scientific knowledge. Thank you for having me, thank you for welcoming me, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to say some words today.
You moved really fast, by the way. That's impressive. We have one question right over here in the far left corner. We'll come and find you, sir. Keep your hand raised, please. Thank you. We have about 10 to 12 minutes for questions. Thank you, Mr. Raia.
Thank you very much for being here. Very embarrassing to keep my hand raised that long. I wanted to know, given some of the techniques that are used by nefarious actors, has the FBI or has the Justice Department had any experience where you just can't translate those actions into a charge that you really can articulate to in a prosecution? And are there changes or are there adjustments that the Bureau has had to make as a result?
No, that's a great question. First of all, if you haven't been involved in one of these cases, I will tell you, and the folks sitting at the table here that are currently working this stuff will tell you, these charges are very, very complex. They're very complicated. There are a lot of moving parts, and quite frankly, there just isn't a lot of expertise On the prosecutor side, Department of Commerce, which owns a lot of these laws, they're understaffed like everybody else. And so a lot of times we find ourselves not getting to that arrest, not getting to that arrest part. So for us, that's where the partnership comes into play. That's the critical part. We work with you all and say, all right, how can we call it alternative disruption, right? How can we disrupt this person? And a lot of times that's like, hey, here's everything we've got. We can't get there on a charge, but what can you all do policy-wise to either remove that person or at least take them out of the area that they're working in that we're concerned about. And so I will tell you that happens more than the arrest scenario. That happens. I know personally and I'm sure the guys here are involved with that with A&M probably on a weekly basis, if not more frequently. We look at those folks and then, you know pretty early on whether or not you're gonna be able to get there or not. And some of it's staffing too. We just don't have enough people to dedicate ourselves to these cases that take months to complete. And so a lot of times we would go here and just go with our partners, say, here's what we got, what can you do? And again, that relationship built on trust, if that relationship is there on trust, it works great both ways. It's a great question, thank you.
And I think we also have one from our online virtual attendees.
Howdy, good morning, sir. We have a question, says, FBI staffing levels and criminal enforcement priorities seem to have shifted. Many of us no longer have access to a local point of contact and have lost our relationships with the agency. What is the FBI's effort to rebuild those partnerships?
Yeah, I'm glad that's a good question. Yeah, we've had a huge paradigm shift. I mean, it's pretty obvious. We've gone, after 9/11, obviously the pendulum swung really far to the right with national security, as it should have after 9/11. And now we're starting to see that pendulum come a little bit back. As a former 10-year criminal guy when I was out on the street, that makes me happy because I think we needed to gain some ground back in that space. And so we have shifted our priorities, but I think one of the things that we're going to focus on this year, at least for me from this position, is not forgetting that, yes, violent crime is much more of a priority than it has been in the past. However, we are the only showing town when it comes to this stuff. We've got all kinds of other agencies that can investigate drugs. We got all kinds of other agencies that can investigate guns, violent crime. Not saying we don't stay in that space, we need to, but we're the only agency that can do stuff like this. And so, my push this year is to make sure that our folks don't lose sight of that, and continue to press and to continue to push forward on cases specifically like that. So I'd be interested to know where that person works at, if they're happy sharing, and then we'll get somebody out there this week to go talk to those folks. So yeah,
We're going to get more questions, I feel, from that offer you just made.
Yep.
So
yeah.
we have one
Where's my
question right
special
over-
assistant? Go through her. Go through her. No.
Good morning. I have to tell you that I look forward to this talk from the FBI every year, and your talk was exactly what I needed to feel good for some time. So thank you. You started with two premises of the FBI recognizing and valuing open collaboration and international collaboration, but then you told us all the potential problems with that. So based on that and the realities, if you were king for an hour, what advice you think we can put in practice to safeguard open collaboration and international collaboration? Two things.
I think the advice is, and I'm going to sound like a broken record here, just because I lived it for 7 years, the advice is being on a first name basis with your FBI counterparts or anybody that works in that space. I think a lot of it we want to stop what we call left of boom, right? We don't really want cases like the Chen and Zhu case I just talked about. We don't want those. That means we missed something. We're never going to get that research back. We want to be in a spot where we catch that stuff beforehand. So for me, even though it's not cool, we don't get to put handcuffs on somebody. For me, when I was in charge of the RA here, I thought it was a better win for us when we were actually able to go to Kevin, we were actually able to go to his office and say, look, here's what we've got. We don't think anything's left right now, but he or she is getting ready to take some stuff. What can you do to help us mitigate that? And so I mean, that, in my opinion, the more we replicate these relationships across the country with not only how many ever universities are here, we have to keep expanding those relationships across the country. That's the only way we're going to mitigate all the research that is leaving right now. So I do sound like a broken record, but the only reason is I've seen that in action, and I've seen that work specifically here. And in my opinion, that is the best thing you can do. Education, open communication, trust, in order to safeguard the research.
Mr. Raia, if you're amenable, can we do 2 more questions? Okay, we have one right here at the front.
Real quick, and more just to thank you for your focus on trust, because you've been using the words trust and collaboration together. But the thing I wanted to share is just that we don't hear often talked about that trust, like the root of the word trust is the old Germanic word for binding rope together, right? It's literally collaboration in like braiding things together and making them fit, which also becomes the root word for truss, the thing that holds the roof up from the walls, right? And so can you tell us a little bit about like when you're like, what are the pitfalls that most often come between that process of trust and building that collaboration, and that people need to watch for that they may not be thinking about?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think first, and I referred to it a little bit at the beginning, is language. You all speak a different language than we speak, right? So I think a lot of that helped work with us here at A&M was we made a concerted effort to figure out the academic language and understand the challenges they were facing, and I think they reciprocated that on our language. And once we figured out, like, look, we're not coming in here to embarrass you, but hey, well, every time you go and you do an arrest and don't tell us, it makes us look bad. Stuff like we weren't thinking about that. We think we're getting a bad actor out. Well, no, when you go do that and you don't tell us, that makes us look like we don't have our stuff under control. And so that's just a little nuanced part, but I mean, those things are some of the pitfalls. Once was just the communication, the language difference, the understanding each other's language. I think the other thing too was demystifying what we do a little bit. I mean, we brought Kevin and Diane a few times, and we showed them a bunch of stuff, like just stuff that maybe wasn't case related, but stuff to understand, like, this is how we rack and stack our priorities. This is why the Bureau is here. Like, the Bureau is here, and we're being aggressive in order to help you, with your, protect your research. And so, those are, I think, and I think a lot of the pitfalls too are, that communication has got to be constant. Like, one of the things I've talked about before here. One of the things I did early on was I took one guy completely off of cases. In fact, I took some heat from the SAC at the time, and I took one guy completely off of cases. He's a former A&M grad, so I knew he spoke the language and everything else. They know all the whoops and all everything they do here or whatever it is. And I'm like, go figure that out. And I told him, look, your job for the next year is to unscrew up this relationship. I use some different words, but to unscrew up this relationship. That's your only job. I don't care. If they need to know about it, if it affects them, then they need to know about it. And that was a huge culture shift back then. We're talking 10, 12 years ago. We had to shift some personalities around, move some people. But once people started to buy in, and then specifically with this particular agent, I did a couple agents, but with these particular agents, like, that communication has to be constant. It can't be like, and it's got to be two-way too. Like, it just can't be, hey, we need something. Let me go over and talk to Kevin. Just when we talk to Kevin, maybe once every 2 months, only when I need something, right? It's got to be a two-way street. That's another pitfall, I think, is too. Got to be a two-way street. Like, they're giving us stuff, but we got to give them stuff too. We can't be like, hey, we think we had a bad actor in X department. Give me everything about X department. Well, why? I can't tell you. Like, I can tell you how many times that conversation happened in the first year I was here. And it's got to be, well, yes, I can tell you, and here's what's going on. So two-way street, constant communication would be another pitfall. If those two things don't happen, if it's an agent going over there just checking a box, oh, the book says I need to go make contact with the guy every year. It's not going to happen. I mean, you're just not going to build that trust.
Thank you, Mr. Raia. And one last question we have from the group. Anybody? Right over here.
Hey, morning, sir. This is a question regarding upfront risk mitigation and due diligence. Based on the FBI's extensive case experience, have you done an analysis or have any resources for data that if you would have had upfront about these individuals, you would have found an increased likelihood for that tech transfer to occur?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, you know, we have analytical programs, we have analytical resources that are constantly looking for those indicators. You know, we'll throw things into, into a specific program of indicators, right? Like what university they came from, you know, who are their sponsors, you know, and we try to triage, well, these three or four people, you know, or, you know, maybe we should look at these folks a little bit harder based on this and everything else. We don't have any good way of really analytically, right now that I know. Now, I'm not an analyst. I mean, we could bring an analyst up here. They probably could talk a little bit more about that. But analytically, I'm not familiar of any really strong ways that we've got to do that. We, at least while I was here doing the job, we relied a lot on our relationship, on our partnership, because, you know, the research security folks, you guys are the ones, you all are the ones that know what's going on in your department. You're closer to the ground. You got your ears to the ground more so than we do. And so we tried a variety of those programs in the years. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. Some of them gave us good leads, some of them didn't give us good leads. But really the best leads we got came from our partnerships with the research security folks here and across the country. Thanks.
So one last, this is not necessarily a question, but some of the conversations we had yesterday, we talked about how the folks that provided keynotes, the conversation doesn't, it may start here, but it doesn't end here. For those in the room that may not have those types of relationships that you had talked about between you and Kevin and the way you developed that, what advice would you give them if they want to develop that relationship with their respective FBI agents?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would do, you can go online and figure out what office covers you. Is it the main office, or is it a resident agency? And if it's a smaller office, every resident agency has, most universities, there's a resident agency just because they tend to be more rural, especially the bigger ones. Every office has a supervisor. You can find that supervisor online. You can go to our main website. You can go to our main page and figure out and find out what office covers you, and then you can just call. You could kind of cold call over there and just say you'd like to meet with some folks regarding your research security program. I would talk to other folks. It always helps when you know somebody. I mean, talk to another professional who knows somebody that has a good relationship with the FBI in their spot, and then they can kind of vouch for you and say, yeah, we'll get somebody to reach out to you. I mean, I used to do that all the time. We used to talk to people all the time. Kevin used to say, hey, can you reach out to so-and-so in, you know, Alabama? They don't know who their people is, and then we could push them out there. And so I would rely a lot on this group for those folks who do have those strong relationships to kind of help and guide you in that space.
One last question here from.
This sounds like a great resource in the SVE from the Secure Center.
What's that?
Yeah.
This is about a shameless plug? Is that what that
Yes,
was?
it was. It was a good plug, though,
Yeah,
Eric.
it's
We
good.
will circle back to that. So please thank Chris Raia for coming this morning.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you. I appreciate it.